Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. So a series of scandals, suggestions of impropriety, news channels going berserk, well, they often do these days, and a Prime Minister who's not been speaking too much. So is this the UPA again, or is this the NDA? That's one of the questions that many people have been asking. We're going to be taking a look at where we are actually headed from here, because it's a very real possibility we could be heading for another parliament session that once again gets blocked and derailed. Again, shadows of what was happening in the UPA out there. What does all of this mean for us, for politics, for government, governance? Those are some of the issues we're going to discuss, and we've got some of the top experts in here to take us through the full implications of what's going to be happening. Nalin Kohli joining us from the BJP, Mani Shankar Iyer from the Congress Party. Shekhar Gupta has been watching all of this in a slightly bemused fashion for some time, and we'll get your take on this. Yogendra Yadav joining us as well. Headlines not being dominated by the Aam Aadmi Party or its former members for a while, Yogendra. So we'll talk about what's happening at a national level. Vikas Pandey, social media activist, fresh from meeting the Prime Minister, I might add, with some of the other social media activists just a day or two back. So we'll get your sense of what his own mood is. Nalin, why don't I kick off with you? I mean, what's certainly been happening over the last few weeks? I've got some commentators to say it's looking like the UPA all over again.
People are entitled to make their decision.
I mean, news channels going hysterical. As
that's not new.
That's all, okay. That's not new.
So that would be an unfair
allegations
comment.
Of scandals and scams.
Well,
the
okay,
Prime Minister being silent.
Okay, let me look at both the cases and put them in facts. First of all, we are in a sense delighted with the self-goal of the Congress on the Rajasthan issue. I mean, there are documents to confirm. And that was a press conference without homework by Mr. Jairam Ramesh. I mean, he revealed first one document of 49, 54, suppressed the 58, which shows that the Dholpur Palace has gone back to the family, and forgot to mention.
Then I will come to the specifics of all of this.
I'm just pointing out. So yeah. Okay, I'll come to the specifics later. But that, I think, was a superb self-goal. And, of course, we've been able to put our point across. The second relates to Mr. Lalit Modi. And, of course, the questions that were asked of Mr. Swaraj Kaushal a lot, and to some extent, Ms. Sushma Swaraj. Now, the larger question is Mr. Lalit Modi's tweets going to be the base of the national discourse? You say the Prime Minister is silent, the Prime Minister is speaking. He will choose to speak on what he wants to, and he's speaking of substantive stuff that's happening in the country. With Mr. Swaraj Kaushal, he's had a 20-odd-year relationship with him. So are we now to come into a system, by what the Congress is trying to say, if someone becomes a minister, his son, daughter, husband, wife, whoever the spouse is, moves out, will stop their profession because someone's going to raise an allegation?
But hang on. No one is, the issue is not coming because Mr. Kaushal is the lawyer of Lalit Modi. The issue is coming because Sushma ji took steps in a humanitarian way to help him
Let's
out.
Look at the steps also. I was going to describe that.
He could have stayed his lawyer for all time to come. If she hadn't intervened, there would have been no questions.
He might probably stay also. I don't see any reason why he should not. He's professionally entitled.
Let's be clear that the allegations are not coming because he is the lawyer. The allegations are coming because of a step that she took.
It is also because everything that Mr. Swaraj Kaushal is doing is always linked to Sushma ji, which I think is incorrect. Because the UPA, after all, had lawyers as ministers and their spouses are lawyers or their children are lawyers. So that's not the correct argument. Ms. Sushma Swaraj or anybody from the BJP have not helped Mr. Lalit Modi leave the country. None of them have interfered or sought the dilution of the 12 or 15 enforcement directorate cases against him. Okay. As far as the NDA BJP government is concerned, we really are not spokespersons for Mr. Modi. He needs to handle his own problems. But we are certainly working to see how the proper mechanism can fall in place, including looking at how we can strengthen those legal provisions under which the UPA allowed him to go. So if any question of omission is there, it's there. Ms. Swaraj did not speak per se for Mr. Modi. Okay. She said essentially to the British government was a point that we feel that if you want to issue him, as per your rules, a travel document to meet his wife.
We'll come back to the specifics. The question and that are really on the propriety of the External Affairs Minister of
by whom? The Congress Party and propriety.
Yeah. So let's come to the Congress Party and propriety. Because Mr. Mani Shankar Raje, the Congress Party was actually exulting a fair amount as to everything that's happening around Lalit Modi and the allegations and all that were going. The latest, of course, round of allegations have come back to somewhat singe the Congress itself, including references to aunties helping out and, references being made to that.
Running into each other.
Sonia Gandhi's, almost a direct allegation coming at her.
You said you'd like to begin by kicking off with Nalin Kohli. Perhaps you should drop the off. The fact of the matter is...
You want me to kick him instead of kicking him off?
Would you like to try?
Especially because...
I promise you, it won't be pleasant.
Is because this is...
It won't be pleasant for you, not me.
This is because this is the kind of argument which takes us away from the central issue. There are, as he said just now, 12 to 15 notices issued against Lalit Modi by the Enforcement Directorate. And these notices are valid under the BJP government. It's not as if they were a UPA move. They're still valid under the NDA government. And while these notices are valid, a minister of the central government, and a very senior respected person, decides privately to intervene through a British MP with the British government to secure a favour for Mr. Modi on allegedly humanitarian grounds. Now, this is the impropriety. The Foreign Secretary, who was in office at that time, says that she knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
So and therefore, there's clearly an attempt to do this by subterfuge rather than openly.
So these are all the facts, Mr. Iyer, that we have been discussing and debating, and we've heard almost all of this ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks. I'm just trying to figure out where we are heading going forward, because for the Congress party itself, if Lalit Modi and his tweets are to be treated as anything, a lot of his fire is now coming back at the Congress party itself, which you did not respond to.
He's welcome to say what he wants. If he happens to run into the lady who's not a member of the Congress party, who's not a member of the Congress government in London and tweets about it, I don't see how that attacks the Congress party.
You don't believe what he said on that?
But of course, they believe what he says about the BJP.
Okay. Shekhar, are you finding a slight sense of deja vu as to what was happening in the UPA, or is that an unfair comparison right now?
My concern is that the UPA in opposition is becoming the UPA in power, which is stupid. Because they got a wonderful opportunity. One very senior minister and one very powerful chief minister were both caught in clear conflict of interest in situations of unarguable impropriety. You might say that this was improper but humanitarian. Somebody might say it was friendship. Look, at one level, the minister, and they're both friends of mine, and I respect them very much. The minister, this is a senior minister at CCS level. This is not any minister. I don't want to name, I mean, drag in other names, but it's not a minister of state like, say, Praful Patel, right? This is a member of the CCS. If she had to help an Indian citizen on humanitarian grounds, there's a process for it.
Talk to the foreign secretary, take other people in conference and so on.
Tell foreign secretary.
And in the case of the chief minister...
Who tells us money would tell you, Joint Secretary CPV, who will call his counterpart in the British High Commission, to call a British MP and to call the British High Commissioner is unprecedented. I am sure these things have happened but in the past, but to me, this has echoes of Madhav Singh Solanki. That's one. The second, Vasundhara Raje. In whatever capacity she...
Saying that don't tell the Indian authorities that's what I'm doing is even worse.
I translate that into language that TV should like and social media should like, which is tell the Queen but don't let Mother India know. Bharat Mata ko nahi batao, Queen ko bata do. Right? I mean, you are a leader of the opposition. You are sworn on Indian constitution as an MLA. How do you sign a witness statement in a foreign court saying don't tell my country? If she had signed the same statement there and revealed it here, saying, look, he's a friend of mine, he's being victimized by the UPA government, I've stood up for him, where is the problem? I think she would have had a perfectly good reason. So,
but why is the UPA stupid, is what you're saying? Because they're not taking advantage of all this.
UPA is letting the same people make its case here without doing homework, as Nalin said, who drafted legislations without doing homework. Because the whole country will now take 10 years undrafting, right? Because they shifted from impropriety, which was a serious enough offense. I mean, they waded into a royal feudal family's property ownership business. Nobody can solve those businesses.
So you're saying the UP is almost letting the India off the hook. And can I just ask you, going forward, if Parliament gets disrupted now, once again, a lot of people will justifiably, in my view, start to saying that, look, the debate will come back to what it used to be in the UPA days. Is it correct to be blocking Parliament and disrupting Parliament out of the country?
If you miss the target, go someplace else. Nobody can unravel a royal family property dispute. Lord Krishna tried this in Mahabharata, right, and failed. So no one else is, Congress party is not going to be able to do it. If they had focused on these issues, they had sufficient ammunition in Parliament. Now, because they don't have sufficient ammunition to where they've taken this debate, right? They've taken this debate to Swaraj Kaushal being offered a directorship. It's a perfectly normal thing for anybody to say, my lawyer can be my alternate. Big deal, right? Ram Jethmalani was a lawyer for Mrs. Gandhi's killers. So unless they come back to focus, I think they're going to look silly. And second, I said they could become UPA in the opposition, which is as bad as UPA in power, because if they start disrupting Parliament so early, what will they do for the next 4 years?
All right. Yogendra Yadav, can I just get you in on that front?
There's the reality of 283.
Yeah. Yogendra Yadav, what do you see happening now? I mean, we know the entire debate and which way it's been going. Shekhar says that having got a great opportunity, the opposition is blowing it now, and I'm going to come back to then what the government is doing. What's your take? Who's getting it wrong the most right now, the government or the opposition?
In one respect, it certainly looks, Vikram, that it's NDA playing the UPA. Mr. Nalin Kohli says the Prime Minister will speak only if there are substantial issues. Remember, the Congress said almost similar things in the 2G scam. The Prime Minister was silent because the issue was not substantial enough. Of course, he learnt in 2014 that it was somewhat substantial. In that respect, it does remind you of what the UPA was doing. On the other point made by Mr. Nalin Kohli, that, what should you do if you come to power? Should your husband stop practicing? I think Mr. Nalin Kohli, his party, and I'm afraid the entire political establishment in this country does not understand elementary things about what Shekhar said, conflict of interest. All over the world, the elementary norms of conflict of interest are, if there is a friend who I've happened to come in sort of contact with, has something to do with my official capacity, I'm required to do 1, full disclosure, 2, recusal. These are standard rules all over the world. So clearly, the point Shekhar made is absolutely right. There's unarguable.
So Yogendra, I think the point that I just want to get your take on, again, we've looked at that in detail earlier, but just a simple point that Shekhar was making, the focus of attention shifting to a range of other things, ED norms, what's happening in the IPL, what happened in the BCCI, so and so forth, what happened in Dholpur, other scandals or scams allegedly that are coming up in Maharashtra and elsewhere. Is all of this, to your mind, is the opposition, by focusing on a lot of these issues, detracting from what Shekhar feels logically should have been their real focus of attack?
Indeed, the overall impression you get is that everyone is out to settle their petty scores with each other. So rather than becoming a larger question of principles, and I suspect Congress doesn't want to raise the larger question of principles because they have a lot to answer if something of that kind happens. And the overall impression you get, I mean, it's not so much whether Congress is scoring a point or the BJP is scoring a point. The overall impression, the sum and substance of it is that the people get an impression which Pratap Mehta has summarized beautifully in this article today. He says the impression that you have is of a plutocratic collusion in India's ruling class. So there is a sense of disenchantment. This is what would be the end product of this: disenchantment, delegitimation of politics itself, not so much Congress or the BJP.
Collusion, all sitting and based out of London, perhaps, the same. That's sort of what Lalit Modi is also.
I can translate this in Kejriwal's
English. In the month
English.
of June, it seems as if the entire plutocratic elite is in London.
I can translate this in Kejriwal's Hindi. Sab mile hue hain. Right?
Sab mile hue.
Sab mile.
That's the impression that goes out, certainly.
No.
Mani?
I'm only quoting.
And the Congress has actually done a lot to confirm that impression.
Mani, is the Congress blowing it? Having got a chance to corner the NDA, is the Congress blowing it?
Why didn't Congress stick to propriety and conflict of interest?
We have not left either propriety or conflict of interest. There was another issue that arose, especially in the context of propriety and national interest, which was the very considerable investment made by this gentleman who is hiding from us in London in a property that belongs or is said to belong to the family of the chief minister, who as leader of the opposition in a constitutional position had been pleading for him specially and requesting the UK authorities to not let the Indian authorities know that she was doing this. These are all part of the same story. But if you shift the attention away from impropriety and conflict of interest to simply about the Dholpur palace, which is what Mr. Kohli is attempting to do, then you are shifting the attention. What we are wanting to focus on is impropriety, and it is the conflict of interest. And what we need to know is, does this have further ramifications?
Okay, let me move from the opposition. Nalin, to you for a second.
Just a couple of sentences. Just a couple of sentences. One is to just clear a confusion. I'm only responding to the rather elaborate couple of press conferences done by Mr. Jairam Ramesh and the documents that he presented. I had no interest in the property, and we didn't want to also get talking about people's personal holdings. The second thing is about
no interest in the property, otherwise you'd have to recuse yourself from this discussion.
No, it can't. And also what Yogendra Bhai is saying, just to add to it, let's go on this. There is a code of conduct. And as far as I've read it, and everyone is free to see, it's on the website. There is no requirement to say that somebody who's working in a professional capacity needs to stop working in that capacity. By the same logic.
Nobody is saying that.
Absolutely
no, this is the third time you made this point.
I'm making this on Mr. Yadav. You can't assume me to be making points to you.
Kaushal should not be a lawyer.
What
we are saying is that if his wife happens to be the Minister of External Affairs and assists someone who is his client, there is a conflict of interest.
May I now finish my point? I don't know why Mr. Mani Shankar Iyer believes that I'm always responding to him. I'm not. I'm actually responding to what Mr. Yogendra Yadav is saying. So about talking about, recuse yourself and all, by the same logic, if a journalist has a spouse working in the government of India and the journalist is covering government of India and reporting negative stories, would you expect the spouse or the journalist to recuse themselves from their profession? That's a weird argument.
No, hang on. It depends if the government of if the journalist is covering a particular, if the wife is in the government of India, and she's taking policy decisions.
If he's taking cases, so if he's taking cases in the Ministry of External Affairs Ministry, yes, but not if he's fighting them with the ED.
Nalin, if I am the editor of a paper where a journalist's spouse is a senior government official or a minister or a politician, if that journalist writes a story praising that ministry or writes a story that benefits that minister or her or his spouse, that is objectionable. I'll fire him.
Okay.
In any case,
we are ask him to recuse.
No, we are on the same
I will deserve to be fired for having let it through.
We are
I
on
will
the
never
same
let it
page.
through.
But if Mr. Swaraj Kaushal is fighting the cases in the Ministry of External Affairs, you have a point. Not if he's fighting them at the ED or
you're
anywhere
again
else.
diverting from the issue. The issue is not Mr. Swaraj Kaushal can do what he wants.
Well, we spend a lot of time discussing him on your channel
can represent,
also. I remember being morning, evening, night.
He can do what he wants. He can do what he wants. I think the question is...
Narayan Murthy always says, it's a very good mantra, when in doubt, disclose. If both your senior leaders, Sushma ji and Vasundhara ji, had just disclosed, Sushma ji had to write a note to the Prime Minister, this came to me, and there's a conflict.
Foreign Secretary ideally to do it. Can I get, Yogendra, you're trying to say something, then I want to come to Vikas on some broader issues.
To say I had nothing to hide.
Yeah.
I was just making a point which I think other friends are also making, which is the onus is not on Mr. Swaraj Kaushal. The onus is on Ms. Sushma Swaraj. The onus is on the Foreign Minister of the country to make full disclosure. And when she doesn't even consult her own ministry, this is shocking. This is absolutely elementary violation of any protocol of code of conflict of interest anywhere in the world. And for Vasundhara Raje to say, I'll do it, don't inform my government. If an ordinary citizen did that, you would be prosecuting that person. How can a chief minister get away with it? I'm astonished.